Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Michaux. I'm a product manager at Gravitee. Welcome to this talk entitled Cross-Platform Catalogs for Unified Governance and Developer Experience here at API Days Paris 2024. So, like I said, I'm Jonathan. My background is in computer science. I did a PhD in computer science on distributed systems and formal methods in Paris. I then worked in a few different companies, mostly focused around enterprise middleware solutions like in API management, event-driven architecture, um, uh, ESB, all kinds of stuff. So that's my background. I've been working in product for quite a long time, about 11 years in total. I live in Nantes in France, which is the city of this iconic mechanical elephant that rides around the city spraying people with water. It's a lot of fun, definitely worth a visit if you're ever in the area. I'm also the co-author of the Kubernetes Cookbook, second edition, having spent a bit of time working on Kubernetes and Kubernetes operators and that sort of thing. Oh yeah, and also I gave another talk at the conference called AI Agents Meet Async API as part of the Async API sub-conference. So please check that one out too if you're interested. It was a really interesting foray into how basically we can make Async API become the standard for function calling for AI agents with asynchronous systems. So quick outline here. I want to talk a little bit about the challenges that people are facing related to creating catalogs across multiple platforms and like basically why this matters as a problem. I'll talk then about general requirements, things you might need to think about if you want to build a catalog. And then I'll dive into a little bit of an example as to how we at Gravitee think about this and how we solve this problem in our platform. So first of all, who has this problem? Who are we talking to here? Basically, what we've noticed over the last year or more is that there are loads of people who are like platform engineers, architects, integration managers, center of excellence people that are managing multiple different platforms in their organizations. You're probably familiar with this. You've grown through acquisition. You've got a multi-cloud strategy. You're using best-of-breed solutions. Different things can drive you to having different technologies. So it's possible that you've got maybe you're multi-cloud, so you're using the API management solutions from Google Cloud and AWS and Azure. You might be using some other more independent API management vendors or solutions or service meshes and that kind of thing. You may also be using some event-driven systems like Confluent or Solus or Kafka or RabbitMQ, and maybe you're even using some iPaaS integration solutions as well. This is basically the ecosystem in which many of the senior architects of today live in the enterprise. And basically, this creates a challenge. And that challenge is mostly causing two negative impacts in the organization. The first one is it's causing very scattered governance. So it's very hard for you as a team to basically understand what are the assets available in your IT, what are their quality levels, are they secure, who owns them, all that sort of thing. And the other negative impact is on developer experience. So it's very hard for a new developer joining your company to figure out where are these systems, how can I consume them, what do they do, how can I use them so I can do my job and build applications and create value for the company. Now, I just want to clarify one small ambiguity, and I think this is interesting. It really points to something, maybe a bit of a shift in mindset, which is the difference between a developer portal and a catalog. Not to say either one is right or wrong, and this definition is not scientifically accurate. It's just a way to sort of think about it. But we're seeing this distinction come up more and more. Basically, both of them have a lot in common. But a developer portal can be internal and external facing, so can a catalog. Both of them are likely to require some level of customization in terms of branding and look and feel. Both of them are probably going to require access control to figure out who can access which APIs. But where it starts to diverge a little bit, and one of the aspects where it really starts to diverge is that most commonly, most typically, if you look at developer portals, they're often single platforms. So they focus on a single API gateway or a single, event streaming platform. Not always, but often. And they often also focus just on APIs. So one type of technology, one type of interaction method, synchronous REST APIs. And what we're seeing, though, on the catalog side, people looking to solve this cataloging problem, they're not thinking about it just from an API's point of view, nor just from a single platform point of view. They're thinking about multiple platforms. So, all the logos we saw just in the previous slide, They want to manage all of these. They want to catalog all these different things. And these include different technologies. There are REST APIs, there are event streams like Kafka topics, there are integrations from iPaaS vendors, and there could be all kinds of other things potentially. So that I think when thinking about catalogs, it's a different mindset because you're trying to solve this at an even higher level. Now, let's dive into like 3 of the core challenges basically that are faced by people who have multiple platforms in their organizations. The first one is fragmented governance. So basically, because of the increased number of systems you want to manage here in this scenario, you're potentially talking about thousands of APIs, event streams, integrations. You really are, the numbers are really high. And that's just because of the number of platforms, but also probably because of the maturity level of the organizations that are interested in this. And this causes, a big challenge. One of the things that we hear often is about shadow APIs. So basically, you have APIs in your system, you just don't know where they are. You don't know who owns them. They're not documented anywhere. They're kind of lost in the shadows. The other one is design. So basically, are your APIs designed properly? Are they consistent? Security comes up often as well. How can you determine if all your APIs are secure? Are they secured in the same way? Are they using the same types of policies, authentication? Are they documented in a unified and clear way? And then, once you've thought about all these challenges here, you can also consider, like, do you have some kind of review processes in place, either automated or manual, so that, for example, certain operations might be blocked or raise a red flag if someone, for example, tries to publish an API to a portal and its quality is too low? And do you have like human-led review processes in place where if somebody tries to publish an API to your portal, to your catalog, are you able to solicit a review from a human before they're able to proceed? So these are all challenges that come from the just difficult governance when it comes to managing all these different systems on all these different platforms. The second big challenge is basically self-explanatory in this slide, which means how do developers find your APIs? So by what means is a developer that joins your company today going to be able to discover what APIs, what event streams are available for him or her to use? Developers need to build applications. They want to ship quickly. They want to be differentiating. They want to create value for your company. But how can they do that if they can't find all the invaluable data and services they need to build their applications? So that's why discoverability is a big challenge, especially when, again, your APIs and event streams and whatnot are spread across different platforms. You might have multiple different developer portals already because you've got one for each platform, but it creates fragmentation and a painful developer experience. And for those of you who are not listening to me talk, but looking more at where's Wally? There he is up there in case you didn't find him already. Now, the third and final problem I want to mention here is basically how hard is it for developers to access your APIs? Does it feel like when a developer wants to get access to an API that they're up against Gandalf the Grey and he's shouting back at them, "You shall not pass"? I think that a lot of companies have basically experienced that pain point today, where it takes such a long time sometimes to get access to a system. A developer comes along and says, "Oh, I know there's an API on AWS that I want to consume, but who owns it? I'm sending an email to one person, they're forwarding it to someone else. I'm getting back some API documentation. Now I need to figure out how to get an API key. But to do that, we also have to integrate with a third-party IDP and some other system, and it just becomes a pain. And if all that is manual, it becomes very challenging for a developer to quickly get access and start building applications and delivering value. So that's a big pain point that really is causing a lot of friction. So, assuming you're aligned with the idea of all these different challenges that we've been seeing in the market, you might think, okay, well, let's try and build a catalog that can solve this problem. Some people are calling this a marketplace. Some people are calling it a developer portal. You can call it what you want, but ultimately you want to improve your governance and improve your developer experience by creating a catalog. So there are a few questions you're going to want to ask yourselves if you proceed and try and go down this path. The first one is, how do you actually get APIs and event streams and all these things into your catalog? So there are basically different ways you might want to do this. The first and most primitive one is, of course, just basically uploading files into your catalog. You could have open API definitions, async API definitions, other descriptors, and you could just say, well, I've got some kind of CMS and we can upload files into it, and then they're now part of the catalog. Great. You can obviously see that it's easy to use, but you'll have challenges over time keeping things up to date if everything has to be manual in that way, especially, again, if we're talking about thousands and thousands of APIs. The other way you might think about is using Git. So you might have a lot of useful information already versioned in a Git repository, like API definitions. And if you could plug into those Git repositories and fetch them and pull things into your catalog, that would be very valuable. The other thing we see also is, let's say, for example, you've got your backend microservices running on Kubernetes. You've got tens, maybe 20 microservices, and they're all exposing their own open API definitions at runtime on a URL. So that might also be an interesting way to provision your catalog, is to be able to fetch those API definitions dynamically at runtime from where they are. Finally, you might also be using some of these platforms like Confluent, Azure, IBM, AWS, and have APIs defined there already, and you would like to sort of fetch them and be able to discover and ingest them into your catalog. So those are all the different, basically, ways that I've seen people trying to populate their API catalogs. Different ones have different advantages depending on your workflow and how you run your backend services, basically. Now, let's assume you've now managed to catalog all of your APIs. There are a bunch of things you're going to need to think about in terms of just how you manage your catalog over time. So first of all, access control. So this is very interesting. We've seen time and time again that there are three main classes or categories of assets in a catalog that keep coming up. Public APIs that anyone can consume, private ones that can only be consumed by people inside your organization, and then partner APIs, which can be seen by specific groups of users that belong to certain partner organizations. So you need to be able to figure out a way to set that up, identify what users belong to what groups, what APIs are visible by what groups. Customization, as I mentioned before, can be very important depending on your company. Branding and look and feel might be an important part of the way you do business with partners, and it might be very, very important for you to make that really stand out in the way you design your catalog. Lifecycle management then is all about how you manage the APIs that you've cataloged and the other assets you've cataloged over time. So you need to, first of all, publish them. You need to decide, okay, this one is ready to be published, ready to be made visible to a certain set of users. You might want to evolve them over time and version them. And when time comes to deprecate them, you might also want to make that clear to consumers that this API is now deprecated and will soon be retired. And finally, documentation. So you're going to need to make sure people can onboard easily into this catalog, find their way around, understand what use cases each asset, each API will solve, contact information to reach out to necessary people, all the other sorts of documentation you could imagine that you'd often also find on a developer portal. Now, okay, we've ingested stuff into our catalog. We've managed a lot of different dimensions of the catalog. Now, what if you want to enable developers to get access to the systems you're cataloging? So how can they actually request credentials, authenticate against these assets in a centralized way? So this is a great thing to aspire towards, basically a catalog where developers can find APIs, but also request access all in one place in a unified way, even if behind the scenes, these systems are running on different platforms like Azure and Apigee and IBM. So automated subscription management is all about trying to enable developers to come to your catalog, click on a button, and then get back some credentials they can use to consume your API, or have their application registered and now authorized to consume your APIs using OAuth or something like that. Now, what we found is that it's very easy. It can be quite easy to set up basic subscription management workflows where we integrate with the third-party provider platforms and generate credentials and that sort of thing. But in real life, what we found is that often companies have custom access management solutions. So they could be IDPs, identity providers. They might be some custom in-house layers that are not very standards-based. And basically, what all this means is that you might need some custom logic to execute when a developer requests access to one of these platforms, so that you can properly integrate their request into your own systems before then creating that access on the final platform. Let's say, for example, on Solus. So yeah, that's another thing you're going to have to think about, and which can require a fair bit amount of work, basically, just to get those flows working. But again, this is one of the big pain points too, where developers are probably losing a lot of time just to be able to access these external systems. Now, having a catalog is great, but you want a catalog of great assets and APIs. You don't want a catalog full of crap. So keeping quality of your catalog up is a very important thing to think about. there are a lot of great tools these days that are coming out to enable you to monitor and govern the quality of APIs and other assets in an automated way. One example of such a thing is Spectral. So Spectral is a linter, and there are many others that let you basically write rules to quantify, to qualify JSON or YAML files. And of course, many of the API definitions that we use today, OpenAPI, Async API, and others, are written in JSON or YAML. So basically, with tools like these, you can automate the implementation of rules, which are going to check, for example, how secure your APIs are, how well documented they are, how consistent they are, based on the way they're designed. Now, it's absolutely possible for you to create your own workflows using these tools. Spectral is an open source tool. You could create a CI/CD workflow that is going to analyze the assets that you're discovering and ingesting into your catalog, and then evaluate their quality level, and then make some decision about that, either publish those results somewhere or maybe prevent someone from taking a certain action if the quality is too low. The challenge is, of course, that's yet another thing to implement and to build, which is going to take time and take focus away from maybe building other more valuable parts of your enterprise stack. Now, federated analytics is basically the final chapter here I want to talk about in terms of areas you might want to think about when building your catalog. So if you've built an extremely valuable catalog with extremely valuable APIs, assets, and other things, it's going to be important for you to also understand their usage. It's not much good having a gold mine under you if you can't really understand how much you're getting out of it. And you might be thinking about things like, how can you define a certain ROI over these APIs? How can you potentially charge partners or customers that are using these systems? How can you figure out which ones are more successful and which ones are lagging behind? So having a central view of analytics, no matter where your APIs are deployed, is extremely valuable to give you, as the central governance team, that point of view as to what is working and what is not. Also can help you sort of go back to other teams and say to them, hey, these APIs are underperforming. What's going on? We need to sort of take action to improve that. So there are different classes of catalog solutions out there. Let's just run through them very quickly. Basically, you can either choose to build your own, so you can from scratch, use a CMS tool or some other framework and build your own application end to end. Obviously, quite a lot of work, potentially costing into the millions of dollars to build end to end and to maintain. But of course, you get the most ultimate extreme amount of flexibility there. There are solutions based around internal developer portals. So here I'm thinking about things like Backstage. Backstage is very interesting because it's a platform on which you can build your own sort of platform, your own developer portals, your own catalogs, and they have plugins and things which will let you accelerate some parts of that. However, it does require quite a lot of expertise. What I've found from feedback from people is that you'll need to build and customize plugins to actually meet your needs and solve your cataloging problems. There won't be very much that will do everything you need from scratch out of the box. So it will require a bit more investment as well, and may not be well suited to catalogs which are exposed to the outside world. There are also products, and you'll see some at API Days, that allow you to build custom developer portals. The challenge is that these don't always have out of the box connectivity to third-party systems. They're often a bit more static, like static website generators and those sort of things, a bit less dynamic than the sort of governance type framework we were just talking about before. And the final one is federated API management solutions. So this is where vendors like Gravitee fit in, where we're an API management vendor. We have a lot of we have a control plane, we have a data plane, we have a lot of structure already in place. And what we've done is basically made it easy for you to automatically populate your catalog with APIs coming from different systems. But the foundations are already there. The trade-off there is that you'll have maybe a bit less of the flexibility and customization in terms of style and look and feel that you might have on some of the other solutions. So yeah, basically, if you're successful with creating your own catalog, your catalog will be a real differentiator for your organization. Ultimately, you can end up with the sensation that upstream platforms are abstracted away from developers that can focus on creating valuable applications, and the upstream platforms are something that you can manage with their own life cycle. You can swap them out. You can do all kinds of things. Ideally, basically, you're creating a bit of a separation there, which is giving you a lot more agility as an organization. So I just want to quickly show you, to wrap up, kind of how we're thinking about this at Gravitee and what this looks like. So if I just switch over here, I've got Gravitee opened here, Gravitee API Management. And what you'll see is I'm using Gravitee to catalog APIs from different platforms. So I've got two Confluent platform APIs. So these are basically topics from a Confluent cluster. I've got APIs from Azure API Management, from Solus. So these are also event streams. I've got APIs from Apigee, from Azure API Management, and from IBM. So I've populated my Gravitee catalog with APIs from all of these different platforms. And each one, basically, if you open them up, like let's have a look at this Confluent topic here, you'll find a bunch of information that we've automatically ingested from those platforms, like the name, the description, a bunch of metadata also. And particularly interesting is we've generated an async API definition that matches the topic in Confluent. So we've got information about the servers, the topic, the publish and subscribe actions, and also the schema of the messages that are exposed by that topic. We do the same thing, of course, for REST APIs. So if we go, for example, to this Azure API here, I can go to the documentation and I have an open API definition that describes that API, making it very easy for me as a consumer to go ahead and now consume those. And these can all be published onto our developer portal. So you see here, I've customized a little Apidays developer portal, and you can see all these APIs as a consumer from this portal and start discovering and consuming them. Now, how does it actually work? Well, if you look here, I haven't got any AWS APIs yet in my catalog, so I can go to my integrations here, open up the AWS integration, and click on the Discover button. And this is automatically going to go and search AWS for APIs that are available to be ingested into Gravitee. You can see here there's a pizza delivery API. I can now proceed, and that is going to create an API inside the Gravitee catalog representing that AWS API. And we talked a little bit about automated governance before. This is also something we do here at Gravitee. So we have this capability called API Score, which allows me to define certain rules. So for example, here I've written a rule which is going to check that every API name has a region code as a prefix, a suffix inside the name. So if I go back to my AWS API that I just ingested here called pizza delivery, if I now scan this one using API Score, I'm going to get back an error that tells me that the name of the API does not end with a valid region code. Okay, so now what I need to do as a developer, go back to AWS, I can edit my API, add a region code to the name of it, save that. Okay, I'm going to go and now deploy this updated API in AWS. Fantastic. So now for the sake of the demo, I'm just going to go ahead and delete the API that I'd already ingested, and I'm going to ingest again from AWS now. And you'll see that this time I've detected the new name. So it's called Pizza Delivery EU. I can proceed, come back to my API now, and then check the API score again. And this time my score is going to go from 90 to 100% because I have now conformed to that rule. So despite having potentially hundreds and thousands of APIs inside your environment here in Gravitee, you can run automated scoring against any criteria that you could possibly define to verify that your APIs all meet your organization's standards. That's it from me. Thanks a lot for listening, and feel free to reach out if you're interested. I'd love to have a conversation about creating unified catalogs and developer portals. Thank you very much.